Welcome to a ride on the outside. MMA is full of people on the inside, but what about the ones that watch from beyond? Welcome to the MMA Outsiders with Tom Albano and Zain Bando on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network.
All right, it's time for another edition of the MMA Outsiders. This is episode number 87. I'm Tom Albano. That's Zain Bando. Zain, I've had a hell of a day. And honestly, I hope the craziness that I went through doesn't continue on like the craziness that Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler was for a good solid 80 hours. We'll get to that. We'll talk about Ryan Garcia on a couple of different ends, some fights being booked. It's one of those times where it's like, it's an okay kind of time. We got stuff going on, stuff happening in the combat sports world. But we do, this is like we're slowly moving around, slowly building up towards the big one, which is McGregor versus Chandler, which now appears to be on for good.
Yeah, it appears to be on for good for sure. And by the time this episode airs, we'll have 18 days till the fight, and it's going to be the slowest moving 18 days of the entire year because I feel like the slow build to this fight has been the theme of this fight. But speaking of themes and speaking of all the things that we're going to be talking about today, be sure to like and subscribe. Be sure to follow the Empty the Bench Podcast Network across social media at ETB Network across X, Facebook, Instagram, and so much more. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel where we're slowly but surely approaching 1,000 subscribers. And for those of you who are watching us on our YouTube home, go over to our audio-only platforms wherever you get your podcast. And then, of course, do the exact inverse of that if you're listening on the audio-only platforms. Come back over to the YouTube home if you want to see us. And of course, it's just as a reminder, too, that this podcast is presented by Playback. And as we all know, Playback has been a wonderful partner to us throughout the last several weeks. And of our slow-moving deal here is they currently are really helping us out with all of our NBA Finals coverage. And then, of course, you can check us out at ETBpodcast.com. Back to Playback here for a second. Presented by Playback, watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience, from playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together, and it will be best enjoyed together because the NBA Finals are on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. You can join us for Game 3 between the Celtics and the Mavericks later this week as the Celtics cling to a 2-0 series lead. They took care of business in Game 2 a couple of nights ago, and history is on their side, considering around 87% of teams that begin with a 2-0 lead end up winning the NBA Finals. So that should be a lot of fun for sure.
For sure. Game 3, unfortunately, I will not be there for. And we've got a little something going on, which maybe we'll mention at the end. Were you able to get to our banners with our names? Because I think I lost you a little bit during the introduction.
No. Would you mind taking the lead on that from there?
Okay, cool. So I'm Tom Albano, contributor for MMA News, Fan-Sided MMA, and with the PFL, I was doing live results for them on their website when it came to PFL in Newcastle this past Saturday, and I will be on the call with the live results on their website again this coming Thursday for the start of the second half of the regular season, and then of course,
yeah, you'll be busy over the next 2 weeks with PFL and Bellator combined, and all the other stuff that we probably don't even know about fights that are still being made on that side of things. You're gonna be busy.
Yeah, for sure. And then to my right, as always, Zain Bando, staff writer of BJPen.com, MMA Knockout, Sporting News. All right. I think it's time to just finally get into the show. We have a lot to get through, a lot that we need to run through. Start very quickly. Conor McGregor, Michael Chandler, after all of the uncertainty, after all the frustration, the will they, won't they. We even saw things going on during the first episode of The Ultimate Fighter season 32, where you saw, International Fight Week commercial that didn't have McGregor and Chandler mentioned. And then you did see a UFC ESPN like promo about the sportsmanship and everything that goes on inside the cage. And at the very end, they did throw in a little teaser of McGregor Chandler June 29th. And more as the week went on, more commercials started popping up after advertising had been reportedly pulled for a couple of days. So, Zan, knock on wood, it looks like this fight is going on, and we will have this fight at UFC 303.
Yeah, and what was even more of a reassurance was that the free fights were restored on YouTube. So that was even more of a reassurance, as well as seeing that they showed the promo during the UFC Louisville broadcast again and revealed who was going to be on the main cards. So that was a super big that was a super big sigh of relief, if you will. It's unfortunate that we probably won't get the press conference that everybody was excited about. We'll have to wait for the real one in the United States in a couple of weeks, but at the very least, the fight is on. Whatever the speculations were, it looks like they were put to rest. Although, to me, it seemed like, and I'm sure you'd agree, that it seemed to me from pictures that came out that McGregor was sort of nursing either his calf or his ankle or something based on the picture that he posted at the Ankle Foot Institute wherever that picture was taken. So definitely a very wild 80 hours, but just to know that the fight is on and just to know that that people are excited about it, to know that people I haven't heard from in a couple years asking me if the Conor McGregor fight news is legit or not, probably means that you know that the casuals, and I use that term loosely, are going to come out in full force, and it'd be an exciting buildup, and I'm looking forward to June 29th. It's been the longest buildup to a single fight I felt in several years, so it should be it'd be interesting. And again, I'm just very grateful that the fight is still happening, because I was worried there for a bit because there was speculation like, oh, there's no way you can do Jamal Hill versus Carl Zalberg as the main event. We were talking about potential ideas, but you and I kind of agreed that the ideas that we were coming up with would just be too short notice. So to know that this fight is moving ahead as planned is super interesting, and just the stakes of this fight are massive. A loss for either or one of these guys, they more than likely have to go back to the drawing board. There could be a potential for retirement talk, whereas a win for either of these guys puts them in that title conversation. McGregor for at least 2 divisions, Chandler for potentially 2 divisions. So there's a lot at stake, and I'm very, very excited for it.
I am too. And I kind of wondered the fact that it was so short of notice, that it was all of a sudden out of the blue, combined with how quickly things seem to resolve themselves after 80 hours, was this the injury? Because there was the concern, like you mentioned from the photos. Was there some sort of dispute that was going on behind the scenes? Because Conor McGregor is not the easiest individual to work with. We've seen from past fights experience. When the press conference got canceled, Zan, I don't know if you agree that we started to get flashbacks from UFC 200, where Conor Nate 2 was supposed to be in a main event and Conor no-showed the press conference.
Yeah, it definitely did start to feel that way for sure. And to me, it was just weird that like there was no, even now, like
Communication.
people, well, no communication, and even now, like people are starting to put the pieces together that the fight's back on. But to me, the lack of transparency from the promotion itself, and to have kind of the fans, cross their T's and dot their I's to figure out what was really going on was very interesting.
For sure. Regardless, fight is still on. Is there any more concern about McGregor? The fact that we had this little hiccup, the fact that you talked about, like it seems like he is nursing some sort of injury. Is there some sort of concern now heading into this fight with all this going on, or do you think this kind of plays into McGregor's favor with a little bit of mind games against Chandler?
Oh, this is total mind games. I mean, you got Michael Chandler, putting out self help posts and motivational posts and saying, if you want to find me, come look for me in Tennessee. Like, just non normal social media behavior that you don't see on a daily basis, and then to find out that the fight is still moving ahead from the Pivot podcast of places and not a formal announcement from the UFC. I think this goes to show probably how whacked out the behind the scenes stuff was. And we'll get into this topic in a little bit, but I think you could very well make the argument that Roku should consider investing in another documentary, because the making of this fight, I think, deserves a documentary in itself.
Oh my god, yeah. I would love to see the behind the scenes of this crap. We'll talk about the Roku documentary from the UFC in just a little bit. The other top story coming out this week, in the boxing world, Ryan Garcia, what can I say? The downfall continues. Taken from TNT Sports, Ryan Garcia was arrested for felony vandalism at the Waldorf Astoria in Beverly Hills on Saturday afternoon. TMZ Sports has video of the superstar boxer being led away by cops in handcuffs. Law enforcement sources tell TMZ the boxer was arrested and taken into custody after he allegedly damaged property at the hotel, including his room and the hallway. In California, any damage over $400 can be considered a felony. This comes, of course, of weeks, actually just a couple of months, just under a couple of months now, after his victory over Devin Haney, which was ruined by a couple of positive drug tests, which I would not be surprised in if within a couple of weeks' time we hear from the New York State Athletic Commission to overturn that to a no contest. In an update from Saturday night, Garcia's attorney, Darren Chavez, says, quote, Ryan was taken by the BHPD to a local hospital for evaluation and treatment, and to our knowledge may be charged with public intoxication. We saw a tweet from Ryan Garcia basically implying he was going to be put into a mental hospital. I don't know how, if you're arrested and getting placed into a mental hospital, if you're allowed to have your phone on you, because I thought you got everything taken away. But look, point being, this just continues such a massive downfall. Because you think about the weight miss, you think about the daily drinking and all the weird mind games, if you want to put it, or craziness, if you want to put it another way, Zan. But just everything that's happened with Ryan Garcia and the drug test failures and this, it's just a sad downfall. I didn't think we would, you knew things could get bad based on what was going on the fight hype with the Devin Haney fight, but this is just another degree.
Oh, this is another degree at plenty, and I think the biggest loser in this whole situation is Devin Haney, because he probably feels like he got cheated out of a win, right? Number one, and number two, you're seeing all of this, negative backlash, from the Ryan Garcia side, when, quite frankly, what you and I should be doing today when it comes to this particular topic is chronicling when the heck we're going to see the rematch. But instead we're talking about stuff that in boxing terms doesn't even fully matter outside of the ring. So the one thing I can say is I hope Ryan Garcia gets the support that he needs. I don't wish any ill will on him whatsoever. But if he keeps acting this way, he's going to continue to lose fans, because you know it's hard to keep up with someone when their ego gets in their own way. And to me, that's what I think Ryan Garcia is currently going through, when he doesn't have the ego check from someone important to him or close to him, that you should to tell him, hey, you need to really pipe up, because if you don't fix yourself, it's only gonna hurt. So
Yeah, and I mean, you think about it, Sam, like, I wish he gets, all the best of health. I wish he gets all the support he needs. At the same time, it is sad to see, because you think about everything that happened with that fight. He could have been WBC champion. He could have been one of the biggest stars in boxing with that upset victory over Devin Haney, and he is still a star, but he could have been elevated. Like, Devin Haney was arguably one of the names that you could have had with the faces of boxing, alongside the likes of Tank Davis, who we'll talk about later today, Canelo, Terrence Crawford. And now here, between the fact that his win might get overturned to a no contest, most likely, and the drug test failures, this arrest, it seems like, yeah, Devin Haney's a big loser, but Ryan Garcia, it's a story right now of what could have been.
yeah, I mean, it's a story right now of what could have been, and it's a story also, of someone, maybe who earn too much money at too young of an age. I mean, if you think about it, Ryan Garcia is roughly my age. I'm going to be 25 in September. He's around his mid 20s age where he's in that social media craze and stuff. It's going to go back to a point I just made a minute ago. If he doesn't have, smarter, wiser people around him, he's going to continue to make mistakes, and this is just another one in a laundry list of them. And it's the one thing that you don't want to see, especially a rise of a professional athlete that a lot of people hold in such high regard, and like, and you just want to see him around the best people in order to have the most successful career that he possibly can. So,
Speaking of money, funny enough that you say that. We'll just go. It's a perfect transition into the next headline. So Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia are both have both claimed on social media. Ryan Garcia tweeted something like, "Hey, where's my pay for the fight?" And Devin Haney responded with a quote tweet saying, I'm waiting too." And both are claiming that they haven't received the full pay for their April 20th fight. And then Oscar De La Hoya chimed in on social media, and he did so in only the way that you would expect Oscar De La Hoya to do it. I'll read from his Instagram story, the statement response. "As we have always done with all our fighters, Golden Boy paid Ryan and Devin exactly what they are owed under their contracts. As with all pay-per-view events, revenue comes in over time and additional payments will be made when more money is received. If they aren't aware of this fact, we would hope that their managers are. Or perhaps Ryan and Devin should pay more attention to their contracts than their social media feeds." First of all, ooh.
yeah,
Second
it's
of
not good.
all,
It's not good.
no, second of all, I mean, look, I get that Oscar De La Hoya is kind of like Dana White, where he will say what he wants to say and he will mean what he says.
Yeah, but you
I
would
don't.
never. Yeah, but you would never. On the contrary to that, you would never see Dana White come out on his Instagram story and say that his fighters should be
I,
looking at their contracts more than social media, right? He wouldn't. He
yeah,
wouldn't. You wouldn't say that.
yeah, he would. I mean, he has said some nasty things about people before, but I don't know if he would say. I don't know. I would not expect Dana White. Dana White, especially the people around Dana White, are intelligent enough to know to not put something like that in an official UFC statement.
Right. That would never happen. By the way, hey, if it did happen, I would probably be one of the first people to get it, and I would screenshot it and send it to you to show you how hilarious it actually is.
I mean, it's hilarious, but at the same time, this is De La Hoya, and we know the relationship between Garcia and De La Hoya has once upon a time was great, and ever since it's been not so good.
No, it has not been good at all, and it probably will never be. It'll probably never be. It'll probably never be remedied ever again. Let's just put it lightly.
And as far as that last part of his statement about worrying about contracts and about payment over time and such, I mean, the De La Hoya needs his little, he needs his little tip too.
For sure. And as I was alluding to earlier, where we were talking about how Dana and Oscar used to be best of friends, and I don't think that relationship will ever be remedied anytime when at least as long as you and I are recovering, is that's for sure. Maybe when we're retired and old and won't cover sports anymore, but at least for the moment, at least when I are on the coverage beat, so to speak, it won't happen. So,
I mean, Zan, if Dana was asked about this statement, what he would say that Oscar De La Hoya would be using the money for.
oh, of course, and I think Dana, has a secret soft spot for both of those fellow boxers in Haney and Garcia. So of course he's going to defend the fighters in that situation. But I was just alluding to the fact that in terms of the relationship between the two promoters ever being remedied again, I don't think it'll ever happen.
It never will. I don't see the relationship between those two ever getting better. I don't see the relationship between De La Hoya and Ryan Garcia ever getting better.
But even though this is totally unrelated to what's on the bottom of the screen, I think if the money's right, think the relationship with Dana and a fellow heavyweight that's no longer in the UFC could be reprimanded if the money was right, in my opinion.
I agree. I agree. All right. Speaking of Dana and the UFC, I got to see a little bit, and you got to see a little bit too of the documentary that just came out on Roku, Fight
I
Inc.
didn't get a
Inside
chance
the
to just
UFC.
see. I didn't get a chance to just see a little bit. I watched the whole thing.
And speaking of Dana and the UFC, we got a little bit of a chance to see little clips and such of the UFC documentary that was released on Roku, Fight Inc. Inside the UFC. A little behind the scenes look at everything that was going on with the UFC, with some of the cards that were going on with last year. And I saw Zan, and you kind of saw plenty of different highlights from all the madness that was going on with 294 when Charles Oliveira and Paulo Costa dropped out 10 days before the card. 295, John Jones getting hurt, tearing the pec. Seeing the footage and seeing Hunter Campbell like explain everything. Hunter Campbell basically gaslighting Aljamain Sterling into defending against Sean O'Malley. His response to the jacket, Murad putting on the jacket during the face-off there at the end of 288. It was kind of fun. And by the way, Hunter Campbell really is the boss of the UFC.
Yeah,
Sometimes
he
I think.
really is. He really is. You're gonna find this nuts, but I'm in the middle of my second run through of watching the whole thing because I've seen the whole thing already. In fact, Tom, I was so excited for the premiere that I stayed up until 3 a.m. Eastern to watch all 3 episodes.
Oh my god.
I watched it immediately as it came out. It was unbelievable. And just full disclosure for those of you who have not seen it, we are going to reveal a bit of spoilers. So for those of you who haven't seen it, you can feel free to fast forward or skip this part. But if you have seen it, you kind of already know what we're going to get into. Just a quick programming note: in the United States, it is available exclusively on the Roku channel for those of you who are fans of us that are watching us maybe overseas in either London or Brazil or elsewhere. The rest of the world can see it on Fight Pass. So for those of you who are saying to yourselves, "What the heck is a Roku? How do I get it?" Don't worry, if you're international, it's exclusively posted to Fight Pass, and it went up as early as June 8th, which was Sunday here in the United States. But nonetheless, 3 episodes, action packed, nearly an hour for each, and followed a bunch of different fighters. As Tom just alluded to, one episode was regarding John Jones, and the other was regarding and Nunes, and another part of it was regarding Sean O'Malley and Israel Adesanya. It was a very, very detailed and a real raw look at what the UFC goes through on a regular basis. And Tom, I don't know, that war room is pretty is pretty fascinating, isn't it? Especially with the boards and the reshuffling and just kind of the
It
way
seems like a
everything.
fun. I know somebody said this on social media, but it seems like a fun place to work. Just dealing with that
Yeah,
chaos.
yeah, it definitely seems like a fun place to work for sure, and it's interesting because I don't know if you caught it. I did. I'm sure you, and then we'll get into more of the actual context of the episodes. But because I'm such a stickler and very specific, I noticed, as we know by now, UFC 298 took place in Anaheim, California, and it was originally scheduled for Phoenix, Arizona, which thought was kind of interesting that they ended up moving locations, which is something I totally did not know. But anyway, getting back into the actual context of the episode, the craziest part of this entire series to me was just seeing Hunter Campbell having to deal with both the John Jones thing and the Charles Oliveira thing in a several week in a several week period, as well as something that I don't think a lot of people knew. But were you surprised to see that they were trying to target Oliveira versus Islam immediately after Islam knocked out
I did
Volk?
see
Because
that.
I was very surprised.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too. I was very surprised. I did see that, and I mean, it's just craziness that some of the things that we've seen. Actually, when we get to the end of the segment, I do have a little bit of breaking news.
Oh, you just want to reveal it right now?
Apparently, so it's late at night, so obviously the MMA Hour has aired several hours ago. Um, but I guess I'll give the breaking news. Apparently Dustin Poirier was talking to Ariel Helwani today and said if he had won the lightweight championship, if he had beaten Islam Makhachev at 302 a couple of weeks ago, he would have retired there in the octagon.
Oh wow. So he's leaving the door open, or do you think it's more so like an 80-20 scenario that he'll probably retire still?
It, I think there is a door open. I think, and we talked about it last week. I think if there is the chance of a very big fight, then he would probably do it. I think if there was a big money kind of fight, he would probably do it. That being said, we talked about Alex Volkanovski last week. I don't think that's the kind of fight for that.
No.
I'm
And
wondering
and it wouldn't make sense either because Volk doesn't have the belt and the star power is kind of gone there. Yeah, it doesn't really make sense.
I'm wondering, Zan, if he was willing to do it and Dana was willing to do it, especially with a top 5 matchup right away as a test. If
Okay.
Dustin wants to continue pursuing gold, would he move up to 170?
The big question is though is who would he fight? Do you think they could give him Shavkat?
If he was willing to face Shavkat. Uh, I
Because
mean, at that
it
point,
seems like nobody wants to fight Shavkat. That's been kind of the notion
unless
around him for years. You know what I mean?
unless if you want to do a little bit, because we mentioned big money fight, we want to talk about rivalry and such. His old training partner that has in the time since spurred out different claims against him, Colby Covington.
Yeah, that would be one that I think a lot of people would sign up for. That's for sure. I think a lot of people would be very excited to see that build up, and I think there are even more people that would be excited to see Colby Covington potentially get beat. So, yeah, I think that's one I would sign up for sure. But speaking of potential matchups and I just mean back to the Roku documentary for a second. Pretty unbelievable to me. Um, just to hear, and this is the same impression that I got when I met him, but the sheer competence of Hunter Campbell to say like, "Hey, I'm going to work on these two fights simultaneously," or "I'm going to call such and such manager," or "I'm going to get this done." In the 3-minute interaction that I had with him at the weigh-ins at UFC St. Louis, the exact same vibe I got. He knew exactly where he was. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew exactly what was in the plans, what was on the horizon. Like, and I asked him, like, if he thought the UFC 300 went according to plan. He said that it not only went according to plan, that it was absolutely perfect. And he said some sort of unusual main event or anything like that was a total myth. And and he literally told me, like, anyone who believes anything they read on the internet is mistaken. So he knows more than most people about that business and how that business runs. So to me, it's just fascinating that he's now making the big fights that the fans are excited about, kind of overtaking what Dana used to do. And I think it kind of served as a precursor to him potentially becoming the new UFC president, which I think is a very interesting discussion in itself. But
Just based
overall,
on just based on what I've saw from the UFC Roku documentary alone, I could very well see that if Dana gets moved to another position or retires as CEO, he could definitely fit in as the new head of the UFC.
oh, I don't think. Well. Now that you just mentioned that, I think Danny either retires as the president or as I don't see him leaving for another position and staying with the company unless he just retires. That's what that's what I think. But I do think though in another respect, it's very interesting to see, like, and I'm sure you may have saw this part too, but in regards to 294, the way that they were able to turn around everything so quickly and hold,
Mhm.
a promo package
They were
is
sitting there at the Contender Series table.
it's pretty crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and of course they got word that it was going to be Usman versus Jemiah Martinez. Can you effing believe this?
He's basically saying, "Thank you, Hunter. I owe you big time."
Seriously, but did you feel when you saw the part about Jones's pec that did you feel like your heart dropped all over again because it was
Yeah.
so disappointing?
And you could just see the look on Dana's face of God bleeping damn it. First 294, now this.
Yeah. Well, now I kind of would that the fight still stays put for November 2024, right?
Whether it be the 9th, the 16th, whatever at this
The
point.
30th, the 23rd.
Something. Thanksgiving. Well, you could have a UFC pay-per-view on Thanksgiving.
I think a lot of people would surprisingly be in support of that, especially if the main event is Jones.
I know one person. Zan, I know one person who wouldn't be supportive. That Roger Goodell.
That's true. That's true, and that's even a very interesting discussion in itself. But from the parts of the documentary that you saw, how would you rate it, and will you watch the full documentary at some point in the future?
Absolutely.
It's very good.
Absolutely, and considering work is about to wind down a little bit in a few days, I will have more free time, and one of the things I will do is watch that documentary.
Oh, for sure. One of the last comments I'll make on this documentary is for those of you that used to watch the OG Dana White video blogs. This is basically a 3-part Dana White blog, but on steroids and highly produced. So
You're just not going to get anything of Dana White saying that's bleeping illegal.
that's exactly right. Yeah.
You last week said that this fight should be illegal, but it's now being moved to Friday, November 15th. It will remain at AT&T Stadium in Dallas. Serrano Taylor 2 will remain the co-main event.
And it'll remain on Netflix.
And it will remain on Netflix, yes. So this means one of two things, Dan. No, well, this means a couple of things. Number one, I still believe the Texas Commission is crazy making this a professional fight and not an exhibition, like we talked about. And number two, this means either there's something in the works at MSG where they're going to move that concert that's booked off November 9th to have UFC, 309 on November 9th, or you're going to have a crazy packed weekend with Tyson Paul on the Friday and UFC 309 at the Garden on the Saturday, the 16th.
Well, any of those combinations I think are going to make people excited. That's for sure. And just really quick, now that we're on this topic, I just wanted to quickly read a statement from Mike Tyson in regards to the rescheduled date. This is coming from a press release from Most Valuable Promotions as of Friday, June 7th. We'll just really quickly here. Although we had to postpone the fight, I will resume my training shortly. I'm thankful to the medical staff that treated me and to MVP Netflix and AT&T Stadium for working diligently to find the best rescheduled date for all parties. While we have a new date, the result will be the same no matter when we fight. Jake Paul is getting knocked out on Friday, November 15th. This is in person at AT&T Stadium by Netflix, which seems to me like Mike Tyson is calling his shot. He wants to knock out Jake Paul, and he's telling the whole world that he will knock out Jake Paul. So there's your little inside the inbox PR release nugget, if you will, regarding the rescheduled dates. You're welcome. So there you go. What do you think? Do you think that this fight will end up moving forward as scheduled, or do you think we're going to be talking about another date change all over again? What do you think?
I think Netflix has too much invested in this fight, as do Tyson and Paul, that this fight can't happen. I feel like that's going to go on.
Okay, so I have to know from the horse's mouth: are you watching this fight, or are you refusing to watch it?
I will watch this fight. I will.
Okay. I will too, because more than likely our respective outlets will make us cover it because that's the business that we're in. But and totally understand the people who are not supporting this fight and will not even
Hey,
spend
hey,
2 seconds thinking about it. What?
I know Jake Paul's not the most popular person. I know Mike Tyson's way past his prime. But if you're gonna watch this for anything, at least watch it for Serrano Taylor.
Exactly. It is the biggest fight in women's boxing to date. A lot of people thought that Serrano won the first one at the Hulu Theater at Madison Square Garden in 2022. Well, finally, you run it back 2 years later. This is a fight that's needed to happen for a long time, and I think it's going to be a good one. And I think regardless of how it goes, you may very well see a trilogy in the works because to me, with how good the first fight was, with how good the second fight could be, to me, given their style, this just screams trilogy. And this screams trilogy either in Puerto Rico or in London. It's gonna be a very exciting rematch, though. That's for sure.
I, I I would hope in Puerto Rico to make up for the fact that they got robbed of that last time Serrano and
I
Taylor
would
and I mean Jake Paul was the co-main event.
I would hope so too, for sure. And we'll be talking about this card a whole lot more as it gets closer. And we didn't even mention it on the banner, but Darren Till is also on this card too, it'd be very interesting against a very old and aging Julio Cesar Chavez, which you had your own choice words about a couple weeks ago, which were pretty hilarious. So
Yeah, I think he's a stain on the face of boxing. Absolutely.
I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
so.
I still think that way.
You still picking Till?
Yeah. I think Till could finish him.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
I wonder if we're gonna get a big blast of Sweet Caroline at AT&T Stadium.
Oh, that'll happen. That'll happen. Not only will it happen, it'll be turned all the way up to the point where whoever's on the broadcast team will tell the audience, "Be sure to take this all in. We're turning our mics off," and they turn Sweet Caroline all the way up as loud as they can. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. 1,000,
I would love that.
1,000%. And this might end up being, and you'll probably agree with me on this. This might be the most live streamed event in the history of Netflix because of course it will be. So
I mean, Zan, we've talked about the idea of Netflix starting to get more into live programming, especially in live sports programming. They've got WWE Raw coming in January. Then we've talked about the potential of could the UFC in their next TV rights deal go over to Netflix. There's
so speaking of that, given the tweet that I sent you earlier today, and I quote that will and shockwaves through the boxing world, is Netflix going to be a part of those plans in your opinion? What do you think?
potentially.
I could see it too, especially with all the major players in the streaming world, including Amazon Prime Video, which we'll get to in a little bit. But this should be interesting. November 16th, Tyson Paul. It's back on AT&T Stadium exclusively on Netflix. No, don't miss it. That's for sure. Because regardless of if you hate the fight, regardless of if you love the fight, it'll be a spectacle. That's for sure.
Uh Kai Asakura, one of the best bantamweights outside of the octagon, is outside of the octagon no more. He announced during the most recent Rising card that took place this past Sunday that he is signing with the UFC, vacating his bantamweight championship in the process. And per our good buddy Alex, the UFC is looking now for a top 5 opponent for Asakura's promotional debut, which tells me he's probably going to be the main event or co-main event of a fight night card, unless he's the co-main event of a pay-per-view.
Yeah, I agree, and I would argue this is the biggest signing for the UFC since Alex Pereira. What do you think?
I think this is one of the bigger signings, Zan, for the lighter weight classes, the flyweights, the bantamweights, featherweights, because
No,
Kaya
no, I know.
Sakura
I just
has
no,
been.
I know. I wasn't really focused on division. I was just more focused on like name value, like in the
I think
global article.
he has some solid name value. You know, he's had his wars with the former Bellator and Rizin bantamweight champion Kyoji Horiguchi. He's done well for himself in Rizin, like I said, two-time bantamweight champion. And I mean, the fact that the UFC respects the name because the fact is they're looking for a top 5 opponent, which means, I mean, Zan, could you see the idea of potentially Kaya Sakura versus like a Peter Yan or something?
Oh, I love to see that, and
Uh,
it would also prove, you know, how I feel about Peter Yan. It would also show if Peter Yan, still has it or not. If if he can still compete against the best of the world, if he can still compete at that high level where he was the UFC bantamweight champion of the world, I think that potential matchup can answer a lot of questions. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. And then on the other side of the coin in the PFL world, we have another ship jumper. Marc Diakese is jumping over from the UFC in free agency over to the PFL. They confirmed that at the PFL Newcastle card this past weekend. He will not be a part of any season for 24, obviously, because it's all underway. However, he will be part of the 2025 season. He'll be on the global stage. He will get the big stage.
I guess you being more of a PFL, I guess I could say aficionado or expert more than me. Were you surprised to see that Mark decided to part ways with the UFC, or do you think
I
this was
think
only a matter of
so.
time?
I think so because he had done fair for himself in the UFC, but given the PFL and I mean, Sam, we've seen the PFL sign talents. They have the money to sign talents away. We saw what they did with Shane Burgos a couple of years ago. We saw what they did with Marlon Moraes after he retired from the UFC the first time. Retired from the UFC, retiring for a first time, I should say. The Anthony Pettis, the post prime Anthony Pettis, the post prime Rory McDonald. We've seen what this promotion can do with its money, and is Marc Diakese a jaw dropping signing? Probably not, but at the same time, it's name value, which is something they're always going to look for.
Oh, for sure, and it's clear that they respect his name, and it's also clear that you know the hardcore combat sports bubble, understands how big of a signing this is, and with how many international cards the UFC has planned in the pipeline for the fall. Him being a headliner, a co-headliner on a fight night, a featured fight on a pay-per-view. He'll get um he'll get interaction for sure. But with Deke, he say going over to the PFL, it's not going to be the first time this will happen, and it's not going to be the last time either. Because
No.
it's clear that Deke he say sees something in the PFL that he did not see in the UFC. So it'll definitely be very interesting to see how he fits in that mix as the PFL continues to expand.
Mm-hmm. Let's just do a little bit of recapping from the past couple of weekend cards. Very controversial finish in the main event of UFC Louisville. Nassourdine Imavov getting a controversial fourth round stoppage. Jared Cannonier worked him over well. He controlled. It was a dominant first round, fairly dominant second round. Although Imavov got some nice power shots in there. Cannonier rocked him in the third, and then Imavov rocked Cannonier with a couple of right hands there in the fourth round. Uh, he had stumbled back at one point and Jason Herzog stepping in while Cannonier's feet were still under him. He was still, he was wobbly, but it was still under him. His legs were still under him, and the referee, Jason Herzog, stepped in, and the Louisville crowd, the Boo Birds really came out in strong style.
Yeah, and I mean, it only makes sense in the world for the Louisville crowd to boo. Because think about it, you haven't been to the KFC Center since 2011. You expect a very, high octane card with some good contenders on it, and you end with, a bit of a whimper in the main event in a stoppage of that caliber, especially someone, as experienced of a referee as Jason Herzog. I would have expected a little bit more, and given that, Cannonier is, a top five guy in the world and has fought the middleweights in the world, including the former middleweight champion in Israel Adesanya. I bet he did lose, but you would just think, given that high level of fighting, given how the stakes attached, this is the winner for a potential middleweight title shot, and when more than likely early 2025, you would expect more, well, especially given the fact that he was barely given a chance to defend himself, and it was just a very unfortunate situation, and just way too premature, and arguably the worst stoppage of the year so far, in my opinion.
I mean, it's up there. If it's not the worst stoppage of the year, it is up there. And it was just, I mean, in a fight like that, because Imavov, this is definitely his biggest win. Cannonier was ranked number 4, was trying to maintain a top 5 ranking, potentially get back to a middleweight title shot. Because if DDP got past Adesanya, gets past Strickland, and Cannonier wins another fight or two, you are looking at maybe another title shot for Cannonier. So with a fight with such high stakes like this, you have to give, and especially with Cannonier up either 2 rounds to 1 or 3 rounds to 0, you have to give him every chance to get back into the fight. I think he was taking some damage, but I don't think he was at that point yet where he was going to be in danger enough that it needed to be stopped. He was still on his feet the whole time.
Oh, he was still on his feet the whole time for sure. And what makes it even more unfortunate he was barely given a chance to even remotely cover up. He was barely given a chance to maybe
He was still fighting back.
Right, and as well too, he was barely given a chance, even if he wanted to, to move his back up against the fence to see if he could, maybe gain some leverage and throw some strikes off. We hadn't even gotten there yet.
No, I mean, credit. I love seeing Louisville. I love seeing Dom Reyes get his first win since 2019. I love seeing the performance of Rule Rosas Jr. getting in trouble, but getting the submission against Ricky Tercios. But kind of like what you said, this ended the Louisville card on a whimper.
Oh, no doubt. And the most disappointing thing to come out of it was, the officiating and the judging is
It happened again in the
right.
debut fight of oh my god, what's her name? But we had two
Pumajar.
We had again like last week, or probably at 302, one fight where we had 30-27 two different ways.
It's
Like,
unreal in 2024 that we have to have a discussion of what constitutes a 30-27. As a matter of fact, what even constitutes watching a fight properly, which clearly did not happen in this situation, and the wrong person won.
I agree. The wrong person completely won.
Dos Santos clearly won that fight with ease, and she was robbed of a real quality win that could have put her, maybe 2 wins away from a top 15 position. And now that's probably no longer going to happen. It may not happen for quite some time, maybe even ever. So it's a real bummer.
Yes, the high stakes. This is not something to mess around with. Over on PFL Europe, they were in Newcastle. Main event involved Savannah Marshall, the undisputed super middleweight female champion of the world in boxing. She wins her MMA debut. She got rocked a little bit in the opening round, but that opening round was just constant, like I kind of expected, constant flurrying with the strikes, constant pressure, getting the first round TKO. She did mention that the leg kicks did kind of bother her, which to be expected because you don't deal with that in boxing. Clarissa Shields enters the cage. And it seems like they're teasing a potential trilogy fight, not in the boxing ring, but in the PFL case.
Yeah, definitely interesting. Obviously, Clarissa Shields is a boxing match to get through first. At women's heavyweight in Detroit before we can even start to even remotely talk about a Savannah Marshall fight. But I'm down. I'm down to see it. What do you think?
I would probably be down to see it as well. Although, for Clarissa saying, you look more out of it than I did. I mean, Clarissa's 3 fights in the PFL thus far have been less than stellar. Let's be real.
Oh, right. No question about it. And I think more people would be interested to see if Savannah Marshall could knock Clarissa Shields out than to see if Clarissa Shields could actually try to submit her, because those two things are not mutually exclusive, if you will. And if Clarissa Shields has fight taught us anything, at least her last performance, that she has a lot to work on. That's for sure.
For sure. All right, Zan, we have a lot of cards to preview. So we're going to quickly run through the big main events of the 5 cards we got going. Actually, pardon me, 4 cards we got coming up this weekend. We're going to start with the main one, which is on Saturday in the boxing ring. The WBA Lightweight Championship is on the line. And now with all the Haney Garcia controversy, people thinking, maybe Canelo has lost a step or two in his advanced age. Gervonta Tank Davis, quite possibly one of, if not the face of professional boxing now, the undefeated champion of the world, defending against Frank Martin.
Yeah, you know me, I'm biased towards Tank Davis, so I'm super excited to see him fight again. He's one one of the most exciting fighters in all of male boxing, if not in the top 5. And to see, Las Vegas, when him getting the bright lights treatment at the MGM Grand, and will be what will be MGM's 100th boxing match that will be hosted at the arena. I think it's going to be pretty special, and I'm excited to see how he's going to do. Frank Martin's a tough guy in himself. He has a lot of decent quality wins on his resume, but Tank Davis is out to become the best super lightweight of potentially this generation, and to do that, this is another guy that he has to get through. So I love Tank Davis in this fight. I like him in round 9 by knockout. Eerily similar to the knockout of Ryan Garcia. I think Martin wins a couple of rounds early, but I think the gas tank will be too much, and I just think Davis's counter left hook is something that can be messed with, and I think if he catches Martin with it, it's going to be potentially a very, very ugly finish, and that I think could be on the highlight reel books for years to come. What do you think?
I mean, he's got a couple of decent performances, Frank Martin. I mean, he's 18-0 with 12 knockouts. But I don't want to say tomato can, but you look at the level of Tank Davis and you look at the level of Frank Martin, it's just not a match.
You can't really compare. You are. It's very similar to when Wilder fought Brazil back in like 2018, 2019. It's giving me very similar vibes. What do you think?
Yeah, same. I think, like you said, Frank Martin will win one round, maybe two early on, but
That's what I was thinking.
I think Tank Davis is going to quickly dominate this one. You have it round 9. I'm going to go a couple rounds earlier. I'm going to go with a round 7 knockout.
Okay, and just to clarify, are you going to be covering this fight in any capacity, results wise?
I probably will for MMA news just because it's Tank Davis, and if not, I'm gonna find a way to watch this fight because I mean, it's Tank.
For sure, and I think someone who know the head settings are right can definitely help you make sure that you see you see the fight. But I'll get to that. I'll get to that later. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see it. I will be covering a recap what is for MMA knockouts. So we'll be sure to follow our coverage both on the live results front and specifically with Tank Davis and Frank Martin. But going to MMA.com as you're still a part of the Sports Illustrated number. So we'll be covering all that and so much more over on our site as well. So it's good to know that we'll have a hand and even though it might be in 2 different capacities, which should be good. So
For sure. But Zen, the fun actually gets started. We're gonna go to the MMA front now, jump over there. The fun gets started on Thursday night this week, not on Friday. Thursday. It's an early weekend start with PFL Connecticut, the second half of the regular season. You're gonna have the main event of the PFL Connecticut card. You're gonna have Valentin Moldavsky taking on Linton Vassell. And Zan, this is actually going to be, pardon me. There we go. Okay, this is going to actually be a rematch of when they fought in Bellator. I think it was at Bellator 292. They were fighting in a heavyweight championship eliminator, and Linton Vassell knocked out Valentin Moldavsky, who is the former interim Bellator champion. That earned
right.
Linton Vassell a
That's
shot
right.
against Brian Bader at Bellator 300. Unfortunately, because of injury, that fight never happened, and then Bellator closed its doors. So Zan, we got an all Bellator main event for a PFL Connecticut card, and Valentin Moldavsky, Linton Vassell's coming off a knockout loss, but Valentin Moldavsky knocking out Ante Delia, the former PFL heavyweight champion, in the main event of the first PFL card this season. So all the momentum, I think, is on his side, and I could see Moldavsky getting either a late second, early third round finish, or just winning this one by decision.
You're being generous. I think it's going to be an all-out war, and I'm picking Moldavsky to win by decision, and it'll be competitive for most of it. But I think he just edges it out by a round. I think you could see one judge give it to Vassell. Oh, but I think Moldavsky will learn his lesson from fight one and use those things to perform a little bit better and progress in what should be a very crowded and chaotic heavyweight I heavyweight second half, which still I think is a lot more questions than answers, and I'm sure you more than likely agree with that. But yeah,
Absolutely, but that's the fun of it. And we'll see how everything plays on, what the playoff matchups will end up being. Co-main event over in the women's flyweight division. You got Dakota Tacheva taking on Chelsea Hackett. I mean, Zan, I'm very high on Dakota. I saw her perform last season in PFL Europe, winning the women's championship over there, and she had an impressive performance the first time around. I'm all for Tacheva getting a decision win and earning a playoff spot, and she's one to watch out for to potentially claim the women's flyweight title at the end of this season.
yeah. I mean, it's clear that the PFL is building her up, and it's clear that they want to give her matchups that they feel that they likely feel that she could probably win. And this is another one of those scenarios. But I'm actually picking Dakota as well. But I'm going to go a little bit more bold and say that she finishes Hackett. But I would not be surprised with the decision either. Um, to anyone who is picking Chelsea, yeah, I could to pull off the upset and spoil the party. Do you blame them?
Not really. But I mean, I not really, but I'm pretty confident in Cheva's ability. I think the one person, I think a couple of people who could give her a test, number one, is the former Bellator women's flyweight champion, Juliana Velasquez, and of course the current Bellator women's flyweight champion going for a two promotion women's flyweight title, Liz Carmouche.
Absolutely.
But that would be an interesting final to see though. Dakota Tacheva taking on Liz Carmouche, or at least a semifinal.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would be rooting for Dakota in that one, just considering that more than likely a lot of hardcore MMA fans still think that Liz Carmouche is the old guard. But that would be very very interesting for sure.
Over on the UFC side, it's Apex, 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 baby. Back
It's a
to the
good
Apex.
it's a good main event too. A
It
lot of
is.
a lot of huge stakes.
Zan, I just wonder if the Apex can look as good as the WWE made it look good on Sunday night.
It really did. It was a big surprise. And according to our good buddy Alex, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be saying this publicly, but yes, I will. According to some people that he knows, there's going to be some major changes coming to the Apex fan experience, which makes me very excited considering that more than likely be at the Apex at some point this year. So I think it's the first of many exciting crowd changes to come. We know it won't occur this early with this event, but we at least know from incredible sources that changes are coming back to this fight, though a huge fight in the flyweight division. Tatsuro Tyra is putting his undefeated record on the line. Do you think that his streak gets snapped, or are you picking Perez? What do you think?
Uh I mean, this is a tough one. This is going to be a very competitive fight. I don't. I'm split on this one. As of right now, I'm leaning to Perez because of all the momentum, but I know a hell of a Tyra's got a hell of an all around ability. This is one that I'm in the middle on this one. I'm leaning Perez for his momentum, but I think Tyra could be a threat.
Okay, I'm picking Tyra by decision, but I very, very, very much expect myself to be wrong, and I sort of hope I am in many respects. But we'll see. It's a very interesting card. 4 p.m. Eastern start on ESPN Plus with the main card starting shortly. After that, I'm pretty sure it's 7 or 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm pretty sure it's 7 p.m. Eastern. Though, but no, and
Mm.
that's going to be UFC Vegas 93 before the two major UFC events coming up to close out the month of June. And you actually he did pretty decent on UFC Louisville, and you and Pat are still keeping pace while I'm still at the bottom. Though I did even though I did improve to 134 wins, which you would have told me that by the day that this is airing June 11th, that I would be at 134 wins after initially starting 48, 49, and 2. I don't think I would have believed it. So
No. All right. One more fight to talk about. Anderson Silva, Chael Sonnen. We've taken a time machine back to the 2010s, except it's going to be in a boxing ring. And it's 2 weeks before these two are getting inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame for their legendary 117 fight. And you can't watch it in the United States. Supposedly, it's only going to be in Brazil. and it's invite only. And I think the cost of the pay-per-view itself was like 60 something or 70 something dollars. And just, oh my God.
Yeah, it sounds just like a trailer circus, just like when I think it was what was that Oscar De La Hoya versus Vitor Belfort? Is that a
Oh
couple years
God.
ago? It,
Oh
it,
God.
it, it feels like it feels very eerily similar to that.
Zan, I have given myself the Men in Black, the mind eraser treatment to not think of De La Hoya Belfort, and now you just brought it up again. So I'm gonna need to go back to therapy to misremember that.
Well, I'm sorry to put you in that uncomfortable position, but that was the only thing I could think of at the at second. So my sincerest apologies and condolences.
Okay, here's my question: Does
Okay.
Chael Sonnen have any shot here?
No, of course not. Of course not. It's gonna be like a sparring session.
It's just gonna be more fuel for Chael Sonnen's son to use against him.
Of course, absolutely. When he gets old
Uh,
enough, of course.
yeah, and I'm gonna go Anderson Silva by decision. I mean, this one, at least Anderson Silva had been active and competing in boxing for about a year or so. Chael Sonnen, I mean, is done grappling, I guess. That's not gonna help him here.
No, not even close. No, this fight will be boring, and let's just say I'm excited to read the play-by-play after, which is
Yeah.
which is say that.
Well, okay, Zen.
But if I find some sort of obscure way to watch it, I will. So,
But Zen, here's the big question: Will they
okay,
mention at the UFC Hall of Fame speech?
will they mention the fight? I would say no. I would say no. What do you think?
No, no by choice or no, and not Dana and Hunter and all of them are gonna say, don't bring that up.
I would say more the latter than the former. What do you think?
Probably. All
Okay.
right. That's going to do it for this edition of the MMA Outsiders. Hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell. We just passed over 750 plus subscribers on YouTube. Help us continue that climb. So make sure to go youtube.com/ETV Network, hit that subscribe button. And then, of course, you can listen to the MMA Outsiders and the rest of the Empty the Bench Network, wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media, this show on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at MMA Outsiders ETB. Follow the network, the ETV Network, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at ETV Network. To my right, as always, is Zan Bando, BJPen.com, MMA Knockout, The Sporting News. I'm Tom Albano, MMA News, Fansided MMA, and with the PFL. And of course, ETVPodcast.com, which Zan and company are just continuing to crank out blogs on a daily basis. And then, of course, shout out to our friends at Playback. Game 3 on Wednesday night, I believe it's an 8:30 p.m. Eastern tip
That's
off.
right.
So
When I was first referencing the game, I drew a blank on the date. So thanks for reminding everyone.
you're welcome. So Wednesday night, I believe 8:15 p.m. Eastern time, Nick Morganson's going to go live there. I don't know who he's going to be with or if he's going to be by himself. And the reason for that, Zan, I think it's time to reveal a little bit. The MMA Outsiders is going to be invading ETV Sports this week. You're going to be my co-host on another show this week.
That's true. I am. I'm excited. I don't really know what I'm getting myself into, but I'm excited to go through a rundown of what's going to be everything in sports. So for those of you who like my Endo's breakdown show, which will come out tomorrow or later this week at some point, whenever it'll eventually upload, given our crazy schedules. If you want like that show, which is basically going to be Bando's breakdowns on steroids, but with the co-host, so it should be it'd be a fun little fill in to say the least. So
Yeah, so shout out Playback and tune in to episode 237 of Empty the Bench with myself and Zan Bando on Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific.
it should be fun. I'm very much looking forward to it, and even though this is an early thank you, I'm looking forward to coming on and thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
All right, it's time for us to get out of here. Be Joe Piper. Enjoy everything this weekend. Enjoy everything on this Father's Day weekend. Summer, one step closer to summer officially starting next week. And we will see you next week for another episode of the MMA Outsiders.
See you guys soon. Enjoy the fights.